Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about rules of compliance, government mandated rules of compliance, and how they can be a stone around the neck of most, if not all, citizens, and the purpose of them being there is either misguided in the first place or has long since outlived this usefulness or is applied so harshly as to be unproductive. So let's have a look at some of those. What brought me to this was I was going to a department store, and they've got certain rules of checking in, due to COVID, and these are supposedly government mandated. I'm not sure they would actually stand up in court, but nonetheless, they've got. I don't know how fair it is getting these private businesses to effectively enforce the government's policies. That I've got a bit of a problem with that. Now, these organisations, they're not structured or trained or prepared to do this. They put very low IQ people on the door, and some of them are drunk on the power of it all. That I represent the government and I speak for the president, and they almost walk around with a military cadence there. And so I came close to the door, and I just wanted to pick up something from the outside desk, but this very unfit young guy started coming along and actually jumping and throwing his body across the entrance, close to screaming that you're not allowed in, you can't come in until you've signed the book and done this and so on. And okay, and why would you have someone like that on the door? Seriously, but this was they had a real problem administering this government policy, and as many shops did, and some demand all sorts of documentary evidence as well, from people who want to come into the shop and prove that you've been double jabbed and you've had a booster and so on, and so these people are intruding in the privacy of ordinary citizens going about their business. Now, I don't know how much it helps these people. That they may get off on the power trip of it all, and many do. But if I'm treated that way, then I take my business somewhere else, and I've noticed other people doing that as well. So I'm not sure, from a commercial viewpoint, it's very helpful. Nonetheless, we've got these private businesses that have been dragooned into being enforcers and monitors for government policy and government so-called mandates, or mostly emergency decrees where I don't believe they've got have the legal standing to be able to do that. Nonetheless, it's an example of where compliance is required before you can, as a citizen, you can go about your business unhindered and unimpeded. And so that's the primary issue. Now, there's all sorts of issues to do with compliance. So, for example, some years ago I was building a house. It was in a newish sort of area, and it backed onto national park and forest. So when the house was being built, a government flunky would just appeared and so you've got to do such and such because there's a dry creek bed that runs within 10 yards of the back of your property. So okay, well, that's not listed in any report or anything on. So they can spring this on you. Now, there's once in 50 years or something this creek bed runs with water, but you have to put in some sort of a provision for it because it's within a certain distance from your property. Now, because I looked at a neighbour, a couple of doors up, they'd been there for a few years, And I looked at there, and they haven't made that provision, so I queried it. No, but they bought the land before the provision came in, therefore, and this sort of thing. Now, I didn't see why I should do it, and I measured the distance out, and it was it was 10 yards to the to the millimetre almost, and so you'd have to be a real stickler for policy enforcement. But the guy, this IQ sort of 80 government flunky has got the power to issue stop work orders on the house building. So now I think I'd win it in court, but the waiting list in court to hear these sort of cases is between 2 and 3 years. So if all they have to do is sit it out, and I'm automatically now squeezed. I can't build a house legally. The builder won't do with a stop work order. I can't get the guy I can't get the government guy into court in anything under 2 years. I'm the one who's got the mortgage and the debts and so on. And now I did a little bit of work, and there is a clause there. I don't believe that the interpretation of the clause was correct, but nonetheless, I have to comply, because if I don't, I can't build the house, and then I've got all sorts of other dramas and problems. So you kind of have to go along with. It was a few $1,000. It wasn't the end of the world, but I didn't like the idea some government guy can just appear and quote some obscure fucking ordinance or law that you have to comply with under the threat of a stop work. So now, when you're building a house, you get these things. There's all sorts of people just appear from the woodwork. Government operatives appear from the woodwork, and they want all sorts of things done, and they appear incredibly at just the right time. For example, the driveway was being laid, the concrete and the formwork and everything, and just as the concrete truck turns up to pour the concrete, the government goon arrives at that moment. I just don't believe that was fluke. How does the guy do it? Do they just drive around all day looking? There'll be a moment when we'll be able to jump in. So the guy appears and says, "Okay, you have to put a higher, an extra layer of concrete, because it has to be higher this level, and we want, it has to do this and that." And effectively, there was a last minute redesign of the part of the driveway. And again, it's the same thing. Well, you don't have to do it, but if you don't do it, I'll do a stop work order. Now the guy's actually got the stop work order booklet on his hand. He brings it out and shows it. If you want to go down this path, fine, let's do it. And again, I probably could win that in court, but as I mentioned a moment ago, the waiting list is long. So it goes for years. So it's not worth it. So it cost me about $1,000, I suppose, to do what they wanted. But they've got you, and they can force you to comply under threat of causing you problems elsewhere in your life, or in this case, not being able to build a house, as they can with COVID. So, well, you don't have to comply, but it just means you can't go out, you can't go to the shop, you can't go to the store, or you can't go and have friends over or something like that, and can't go see your relatives and so on. So, but if you don't want to get vaccinated, that's up to you. And so effectively, they're not giving you a choice, or trying to put you in a situation where you have no choice. And this is something that red tape does. There's like a point of interception when they can grab you at that point, and then you've got nowhere to go. Under other conditions or circumstances, they couldn't do it, but they have a point where maximum pressure can be brought to bear on you, which then forces you to behave in a certain way that they want, which is the compliance. So now there's a whole lot of things, in the workplace. There's all sorts of mandatory insurances and goodness knows what that come along. So. And again, it's a government or a mandated compliance thing. So when we look at red tape and policies and procedures and the law and so that's all needed and codified. I don't think anyone would really dispute that. But to what extent are these rules helpful, and to what extent do they just allow the state to arbitrarily stand over and intimidate and threaten citizens who've committed no crime, on the basis of a minor a minor infraction. What would be reasonable if they said, well, you need to do this, and you've got 90 days to do it, but they don't do that. You can't build, you can't lay one more brick on that house until you do this. Now you didn't even know about it, you didn't even know such a requirement existed. They can arbitrarily invent it on the spot or make such a creative interpretation of the law that you know it's absolute crap. So this is the, now just on the idea of this idea of forcing compliance, or you can't go about your business or can't live your life. I see this as increasing, and sometimes it's good intentions. And an example of, say, a good intention that's gone wrong was a recent government website that was set up in Australia, and its intention, I think, was probably quite reasonable, but it was very badly executed, clumsily put together. And so the people that are participating in, when you go on the website to register, the organisations participating in it have lost so much faith and confidence in it that you then have to do a separate registration with the other organisation, and then a separate registration again when you're talking about doing any business, and then go through yet another process after that. Now, the website was designed to make it just one process and a single pass, but instead it's now spawned multiple extra processes, even though it's meant to just be one. So these are the sort of things that red tape and so on and on. But my concern about the use of particularly arbitrary stuff, emergency decree type stuff, as COVID was, is that it just gives the government this capacity to arbitrarily terrorise and intimidate and stand over and fine its citizens. Now, for citizens who've got the wherewithal to fight back and go, all right, well, I'll see you in court then most, not all the time, most of the time, they fall over. The government backs off. And I've had some situations where I've been able to stop work on something, and so, all right, then I can stop work on that without suffering too much pain. Let's now ask a judge, see what the judge thinks. And when they realise that you're not going to suffer any pain and they can't really bring pressure to bear on you, they fold pretty quickly. Certainly, that's what I've found. So it's something to be something to think about. Is this again, red tape, arbitrary policies to stand over the citizenry? I think it's getting worse, and I think it's something we need to look out for, particularly where they subcontract to the public. Or small shop owners. You have to make sure no one's allowed in your shop unless this, or will shut your business down. These sorts of things, and it's something that we need to fight back against. So you can't do this under emergency decrees. That's bullshit. If you want to arbitrarily shut business down, you have to do it through a process, a legal process and a political process. And it has to be votes, has to be voted in by the parliament or the legislative lawmaking body, and laws have to be clearly codified. And I think we're getting away from that, and I think we need to go back to it. You've been with Tastus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.